We will start by doing a movement activity to Ludwig van Beethoven's Fur Elise, which is a very famous piece of music. Please note there is a separate video that is linked in the syllabus that you can see what we were doing there. Then we're going to talk a little bit about why I have scaffolded the movement activities in the way that I have. So, we're using the movement activities at the beginning of our class as a way to respond to music. The National Core Art Standards have identified 4 artistic processes, which include creating music, original musical ideas, performing music that other people have written for the most part, responding to music using movement or writing about music or creating artwork from music, and connecting music to its socio-cultural and historical connections and to other disciplines like art, literature, mathematics, the sciences, and social studies. For responding to music in this class, we will primarily use movement activities, and the movement activities that I have selected for you are from some of the greatest and most familiar musical examples in history. So many of the pieces that you hear in class during our movement experiences are going to be pieces with which you are familiar and with which the children are familiar, like Fur Elise. So those examples that I have chosen are actually scaffolded in such a way that shows you the development of Western music from its origins during the classical and Baroque period in Europe until modern music. So as the semester progresses, we will go from the oldest music in the Western pedagogical canon, and then we will move toward music from the modern day. When engaging children in movement activities like what we just did with Fur Elise, it really is important that the child's breath is energized. So when the movement activity is completed, your students should be breathing quickly. That creates an oxygen-enriched brain. And an oxygen-enriched brain is important for an oxygen-enriched brain is important for learning. Learning is easier for the brain when it is flooded with oxygen. It's also important that actions that you do with the students include actions that are on the left of their bodies, on the right-hand side of their bodies, on both sides of their bodies, actions that cross the midline, and actions that are at various levels: high, above their heads, on their shoulders, medium, about waist level, and actions that are low. It is also important and intuitive, really, to include actions that show how the music moves. That is at the heart of dance. So how the music moves is important to the actions that we are going to show. So for example, if the music moves upward, our actions should also move upward. If it's smooth, our actions should be smooth. If the music is choppy or known to be staccato, our movements should also be choppy. We should be quick when the music is quick, slow when the music is slow, etc. So as the semester progresses, you're going to see lots of examples of that. The next thing we're going to talk about in class today is to remediate slightly some of the errors that I found when I listened to your Canvas Media recordings today of your reading of ta, which is one sound that fills a beat, and ta-di, which are 2 sounds that equally share a beat. So the issue that I found when I was watching those videos was primarily that our ta-dis were not 2 equal sounds. For many of you, instead of speaking ta-di, ta, ta-di, ta, I heard examples like ta-di, ta, ta-di, ta, or ta-di, ta, ta-di, ta, where one sound of the ta-di was much longer than the other sound. So I'm going to walk you through why that is incorrect at this point. So if you look at this picture here, you can see a number of different ideas. For example, there are 2 circles. And in class on last Thursday, we talked about how the circles are the sounds. So 2 circles, 2 sounds. You're also going to see two stems. Most music notes do have stems. Only the whole note and the breve do not have stems. So the stem is just a way to connect the sounds to a beam. This beam up here, or the connection place, is the same on both stems, which means that each one of these two sounds is going to have exactly the same duration. There are other musical symbols in which the beaming is not the same at the top. Let me see if I can find one of those for you. Not in this PowerPoint. Let's see. Nope, not in this PowerPoint. But there can be a difference at the top. For example, there might be one little shorter line here and maybe a dot that follows this one. In that case, that would imply that the sounds are not equal. So in this case, these two sounds are equal. Knowing that, these patterns should read like this. My turn, say after me. Ta, ta, ta-dee, ta. Ta-dee, ta, ta-dee, ta. Ta-dee, ta-dee, ta, ta. Ta, ta, ta. Ta, ta. Ta-dee, ta-dee, ta. Ta, 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 ta. Ta-dee, 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 ta. Other common things I'd like to address with everyone is there were some of you who clapped your patterns, ta, ta, ta-dee, ta, and there were some of you who made an audible and visible beat while you were performing. Research has suggested to music educators that up until the students are in third grade or later, clapping while saying what they're clapping, or patting or showing an audible or visible beat while they're saying the patterns actually can lead to a number of errors, either in the claps or in what they're saying. So I am not suggesting to you that you shouldn't try that because you're all above the third grade, but I do want you to know that if any point during the semester it becomes more complicated for you to do two things at once than to just say the patterns, then all you need to do is say the patterns. I know your fifth grade band teacher really wanted you to tap that toe, but as far as it goes for me, it is not necessary for you to keep a beat or clap the patterns while you do your assessments. And that brings us to our new learning for today. So again, this class is an outcome-based class, and our outcome for today is read, write, decode, analyze standard music notation. Today, I have taken a small piece of that outcome or standard, and I've written an objective that says the students will be able to read melodic phrases including mi, re, and do with 80% accuracy. So by the time you leave today, you should be able to read mi, re, do patterns. How do we get started on that? Well, first, a little bit of background. Sometime before 1025 in the Common Era, a monk named Guido d'Arezzo invented a system called solfeggio. That system of solfeggio is a system that denotes the first six pitches of the major scale. You might be familiar with do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, sol, fa, mi, re, do. But back in Guido's time, those pitches were known as ut, re, mi, fa, sol, la, sol, fa, mi, re, ut. In about the 1600s, ut was changed to do. And that gave us the six pitches that we now know as the first six pitches of the major scale. Now, Guido has also been credited with inventing staff notation. There was a system that was similar called neumes that were invented in about the 9th century. But regardless, Guido is given the credit for inventing modern staff notation. And I think it's also very interesting to those of us who are interested in history that music is likely to be one of the first things, if not the first thing, that was ever depicted using a graph. So that music staff, those 5 lines that we know, was one of the very first graphs that was ever standardized in the world. Now, solfeggio is a system that helps us understand how pitches relate to each other. And that system has been used to teach people to audiate or hear music inside their heads and sight sing for the first time music they've never heard before for more than 10 centuries now. Solfeggio is a system that music teachers use to teach children to audiate and sight sing music, and this begins at about age 6 in most American schools. Personally, my school teaches solfeggio starting in 2nd grade. Like rhythm, when we teach solfeggio, we use a sound before sight before theory approach. So in that regard, I'd like for you to stop this video and then go click on the mi, re, do video that is linked in the syllabus for today. Now, when we're looking at those pitches on the staff, we're going to notice that there is a higher pitch that appears on the middle line of the staff, a medium pitch that appears in the second space. For those of you who read the treble clef in note names, that's the A space. And then our pitch, which is called do, is going to be the second line from the bottom or on the G line. So in this picture, we have mi, re, and do, and it's actually going to sound like high, medium, and low when I sing it. Mi, re, do. And this one is going to sound like low, medium, high when I sing it. Do, re, mi. Notice that as the pitches go up on the staff, the sound goes up with my voice. This pattern, number 6, starts with the high sound, goes to the low sound, and ends on the middle sound. This is my turn. Mi, do, re. And this pattern starts on the medium sound, goes to the high sound, and ends on the lower sound of the 3. Re, mi, do. Don't forget that this little star you see here indicates that something from this page is going to be important on the midterm exam. Moving right along, we would then take that information of high, medium, low equaling mi, re, and do, and putting that into a song that for most of us is likely a familiar song. So most of us know the song that sings, hot cross buns, 1 a penny, 2 a penny, hot cross buns. And we would then sing that with the mi, re, do words. This is my turn. Mi, re, do, mi, re, do, 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 re, 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 mi, re, do. We could also read this one with our ta and toddy words, which sounds like this. Ta, ta, ta. Ta, 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 toddy, 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 ta, ta, ta. Finally, we would look at a song that was unfamiliar. So again, it is important when kids are learning to read anything for the first time that they start with words that they know, and then you introduce those same sounds that are in those words, but in new combinations that create new words. So once the kids know that k is from the letter C and at is from the combination of A and T, then we can make new words that start with C and new words that end with at. Does that make sense? So if we know that mi and re and do are high and medium and low, and we know where they live on the staff, we can take an unfamiliar song and see if we can figure out what those sounds are. So I'm going to use the sound for do here, the sound for mi here, and the sound for re when I get here. And when I do, this unfamiliar song is going to sound like this. Do, do, mi, do, do, mi. Do, do, mi, re, mi. Do, do, mi, do, do, mi. Do, do, mi, re, do. And I did that by knowing which one to call a do, which one to call a mi, and remembering that do's and mi's are really just symbols for sounds that are low and high, and re is just a sound for a symbol or a symbol for a sound that's in the middle. So this could very easily be read this way. Low, low, high, high, low, low, high, low, low, high, high, middle, high, low, low, high, high, low, low, high, low, low, high, high, middle, low. Once we understood that that's how this song should sound, we would play a game. To play this game, you would, you can read through this. Just pause the video and you can figure out how to do that. Then we play that game in class, and I would use that game as an assessment of who could tell me which one was a mi, the one that's on the middle line, which one was a doe, the one that's on the second line from the bottom, and which one was a ray, the one that lives in the space between me and doe. Finally, we would talk about a media recording of your rhythm pattern set number 1 was due prior to class today, that there was still time to complete that assignment for partial credit, and to remind you that all late work is docked by 3 points. It doesn't take you less time to do it late, so it's kind of like it doesn't cost you more money to keep your gas tank full. So if you just submit that before class, you can get all of the points. It's not going to take you less or more time to do that, but it is going to give you more points if you submit it on time. So try to get things submitted on time. Next, we would talk a little bit about the 8 areas of participation. We did this by, first of all, we brainstormed on the board all the different things that musicians have to be good at. And then we talked about arranging those into some sort of easily remembered system using an acrostic poem. So many years ago, maybe 10 years ago now, I started scaffolding all of my lessons using this multidimensional music literacy approach that includes things like moving to the music, using the elements of music to express ideas, things like music getting louder or music getting softer, music speeding up or slowing down, that I always ask my students to sing, that we spend some time in every class playing instruments, that we connect music to the arts, to other disciplines, to history, to the society, to culture, that we spend some time improvising, arranging, and composing original musical ideas, not the ideas of other people, but original musical ideas that we create ourselves, that we appreciate quality musical literature, and that we know how to read and write notation. So knowing that is the scaffold on which I will build each of our classes and which I build each of my elementary school classes. I want you to know that we're going to be doing some of this in almost every class. The only thing that we won't do in every class is we won't take time to improvise, arrange, and compose original musical ideas in every class. And the reason for that is that heuristic experiences like creating original musical ideas take a great deal of time. So we won't spend time in every class to do that. Instead, about 4 times during the semester, we will take a half an hour or so of our music class to really dig into creating our own musical ideas. And each time we do that, we will be working in a group. Next, we would talk a little bit about learning modalities and how it's important for you as a teacher and for me as a teacher and for everyone who is a teacher to make sure that we build experiences into early childhood that are visual, something to look at, auditory, something for the kids to hear, kinesthetic, something for the kids to move. They're going to be moving their body in some way that's going to help them remember, and tactile experiences, something for them to touch or manipulate. As the children get older in upper elementary and middle school, it's important to still have visual, auditory, and kinesthetic experiences in every lesson for every subject. But our tactile experiences usually migrate to reading and writing experiences for the children when they get to be older. So if you want more information about visual, auditory, kinesthetic, and tactile, or visual, auditory, kinesthetic, and reading and writing experiences, there's more information here. Also note that there is a star on the slide, so there is something that is going to be important on the midterm from this slide. We'd also talk briefly about how in the formative years of life, children explore everything using all of their senses. That multi-input learning, using all of their senses all of the time. Well, when we get to school, we stop kind of focusing on everything except for visual and auditory. And there's a lot more that we can do there as teachers to really capitalize on kids' senses. So take a moment to pause the video and read through this slide. Next, we'll talk briefly about multiple intelligence theory that was first suggested by a man named Howard Gardner. If you have taken Psych 230 or Educational Psych, you probably already know about this. Howard Gardner proposed multiple intelligence theory that all people have some capacity and some desire to exploit and expand their innate capacity for naturalist intelligence, the understanding of living things, spatial intelligence, the understanding of how things work in a three-dimensional space, linguistic intelligence, which is your ability to communicate your ideas either verbally or in written form, intrapersonal intelligence, which is your ability to work within yourself, to be comfortable in your own body, to be self-aware, your intra or interpersonal skills, which is your ability to work with others, your ability to communicate your ideas to each other, your ability to be socially aware of how your choices impact others, logical mathematical intelligence, which speaks for itself, musical intelligence, which is again a separate capacity that all of us have, and your bodily kinesthetic intelligence, which is your ability to use your body to connect with your mind, to make connections to your world, and to express yourself using your body. So these would be things like nonverbal communication and coordinating your mind with your body. So then we would talk about a little bit about how Gardner's original multiple intelligence theory identified only 7 intelligences. Naturalist intelligence was very recently added. And that all teachers really just have to do better to educate the whole child, remembering that there are really 8 separate facets of everyone's intelligence, and only working on things like mathematical, logical, and linguistic intelligence is a disservice to our children. There's a whole child here that needs to be educated. So our bodies, the purpose of our body is not just to get us to the meeting. The purpose of our body, the purpose of our whole self is to be educated and to be able to use our whole self to enrich our own lives. So multiple intelligence theory can help us do that. And then lastly, we would wrap up again with talking about creating, performing, responding, and connecting, which I talked about in the beginning of class. How those ideas were developed into the Iowa Fine Arts Standards from the National Core Art Standards, and how our learning outcomes are aligned with the standards that are in the National Core Art Standards and the Iowa Fine Arts Standards. And then finally, we would end class with a discussion of children's literature and how, again, you can pause and read through this slide, but the basic ideas is that when I use children's literature in my class, I'm almost always singing a book or singing a story for the children. That whatever I'm reading aloud or singing aloud does not need to match the reading level of my students. So I don't need to be reading aloud only kindergarten readable books. I can read something that's at a 5th grade level to my kindergartners because I'm the one that's doing the decoding. It's also really important that you use dialogical reading strategies by modeling the connections and predictions that you're making and the inferences you are drawing as you read aloud or as you sing aloud. This not only encourages your kids to do the same when you're reading aloud, but also helps them to know that that's part of what good readers do when they're reading independently. It's also a super great idea for when you're reading picture books to your students to connect what they're learning or elements from the story with some nonfiction books. So nonfiction books that are on the same subject, and give them some information from a nonfiction book before you start reading. And before you do that nonfiction read aloud, where you share some nonfictional information with the kids, it's important to ask what they already know about the subject that's covered in the book, what they want to know about that subject. And when you're done reading, that you go back and ask them, okay, now what did you learn by me reading that short excerpt from the nonfiction book? Then you can jump into doing your children's literature example or a fiction reading example that you might read or sing aloud. There is a video that's linked in the syllabus for class number 2 for Over in the Meadow that you can use to hear me give you an example of me singing through the song that is written and notated in music notation in this book. Thank you very much for your attention to this PowerPoint, and I will see you in class. Bye.